Excellent. So yeah, good morning, good afternoon, ladies, gentlemen, boys, girls, between, all around, wherever you're coming from. Welcome. We're doing a practical introduction to CI/CD this evening with Zan. A quick mention. Basically, I have regrets. I decided that we were going to put images on our event cards. And that goes well for a little bit until you get a few kind of niche topics, etc., etc. So try finding an image that goes with deployments and automation. You will be hard pressed. We've gone with an NOAA. I'm not going to do the full name of that because I'm going to butcher it. But they're deploying some weather buoys, as far as I'm aware. But yeah, continuous deployment for this evening. Quick note, last event of the year of 2020. Bring it on, if you ask me. The Webb Telescope. Come speak to, chap from Norwich Astronomical Society. Didn't pronounce NOAA in worry that I'd butcher it and did that instead. But they will be joining us to speak about the new James Webb Telescope. They're quite heavily involved in the tech that goes on behind that and the launch of the James Webb Telescope in 2021. So join us for that. Wednesday live streams, last one next Wednesday, 12 o'clock on the YouTubes. And join us again in January for plenty more. So like I say, Wednesday, 12 o'clock for the live streams. The Virtual Social Club. Join us at 5:30. That will be running throughout December. Dom Davis will be hosting our Virtual Social Club, so join us on that one. A quick thank you to the User Story. As I mentioned in our last event, they are now sponsoring our Discord and the quarterly engagement prize, and a little bit more, to be fair. There's a new competition coming soon, so watch this space. There'll be a Discord link going out on the chats, so join if you're not already a member. We're still looking for a corporate sponsor, so if your employer would be interested, please do give us a shout. Patreon.com/NorfolkDev, or just pop us an email, to be fair. A quick shout out and thanks to our community members that are already Patreons. They keep the lights on here over at Nordev. It is surprisingly expensive to run a little community. So yeah, our thanks to them. Anyway, I'm going to get out of the way and hand directly over to Zan from CircleCI to talk about CI. Thanks, Zan.
Hi, thank you. Let me share my screen. Okay, I hope I'm not sharing speaker notes.
Yeah, no, that's a slide.
Good. My name is Zan Marken. I'm a developer advocate at CircleCI. My job is great. It's basically going to communities like this one and hanging out with folks, helping out with tech, whether that's CircleCI specific or it's DevOps specific or it's around CI/CD. I'm happy to chat. I'm happy to listen to if you have any issues with our tech. I'd love to know. If you love our tech, I'd love to know. If just chat and share my learnings. I have to admit, I've only been with CircleCI for just over a month. I joined in the beginning of October. But having said that, I'm no stranger to CI/CD. I've been maintaining, creating, mostly breaking pipelines since, for better part of the decade. Across mobile applications, across APIs, websites, all sorts of things, and on various different CI/CD tools. So yeah, I'm a developer by trade, but let's say 4 or 5 years ago, I moved into developer relations to basically be someone who talks for a living. Outside of work, I am a participant in the Oxford and AstraZeneca COVID vaccine trial, we're eagerly anticipating results for that, and hoping that the next meetup here is going to be in person and not over Zoom, over those rectangles. But yeah, also, yeah, I've recently deployed something else. You may hear a young baby crying in the background of my. I apologize for that. Yeah, you can't really turn off a baby, so yeah. Anyway, without further ado, let's talk about CI/CD. I've set this talk up to be as a little practical intro. So starting off from very basics, we'll be trying to answer the hows, the whats, the whys about CI and CD. Obviously, I work for a company that creates a CI/CD tool, CircleCI. So there will be a few demos, which will be around CircleCI. But in general, most of the content is universally applicable to any CI/CD tool. It's mostly covering the principles around it. Anyway, so if you're not familiar with CI/CD, or if you are, I'm hoping that in this talk you will you have at least one of these questions, and I can answer them. Yeah, if you have any questions as I go along, as I'm talking, please do ask. Whether if it's in Zoom chat, I can probably weave it in to the conversation itself if it's super on point. If it's over in YouTube, then the organizers will monitor that and ask it as well. I like this to be quite an interactive session, so that we have a little bit of that normal feeling that we would get otherwise in a real event. Anyway, we'll cover the following things. So what CI/CD is, what does the abbreviation mean? Who is it for? Is it for you? Is it for someone else? Is it relevant for you? I hope it is relevant for all of you, and why you should care about it if you don't currently have it integrated. These are more broad, general topics, and now we're going to go more into a bit more practical details. So how it actually works, how to set it up, how to get started, and going from there, where you can get more resources to learn a bit more. So let's jump in. Beyond the sheer abbreviation, which is convenient but confusing, CI stands for continuous integration, and CD stands for either continuous delivery or continuous deployment of software, and it's also automated. We'll untangle these terms a bit later, but essentially we're talking about software. We're not talking about cars or bread or something like that. And yeah, we're talking about an automated process of taking code to applications, to users. All right. So now that's the what. Now let's look at the whys. We as developers, we really want to ship better software. We want to be faster at it. We want to ship it faster, get it to the users faster, and we want to struggle less along the way and do it more reliably and sleep better at night, which is, I suppose, pretty standard for any software. By the way, the image behind this is of shipping ships. Besides the point.
I take it back. There is a perfect image for deployment, and that was it.
You can use that one then. But isn't Agile supposed to solve all of these things, right? Shipping better software, doing it faster, and doing it more reliably. I would say yes, but Agile covers mostly development process. So if you're not familiar with Agile, it's about bringing the customer, the user in before the software is all packaged and done, and kind of having these kind of shorter iteration cycles where you kind of get the software to the users faster and sooner, and be able to repeat it and fix small problems rather than fix large problems 6 months down the line. But Agile is not about shipping, and it's not about automation. So that's where CI/CD comes in, because Agile is only about building software, but it doesn't tell us anything about actually getting it to users. So for that, you need operations people, you need testers, you need people who set up all the infrastructure in place so that developers can happily develop. So there were some smart people who coined the joining of developers and operations DevOps. And basically, it works like having the development team and the customer and the operation people who are actually going to be doing the infrastructure that runs the software, that the software runs on, together in one room, talking as much as possible and collaborating as early as possible in smaller iterations. And that's the core tenet of the DevOps methodology, and it really helps us do all of that. So ship better software faster, more reliably, and through automation. And CI/CD is that glue that, or bridge across that gap. So yeah, that's a tool that bridges the DevOps gap. Let's untangle the words a bit more. So CI, continuous integration, means taking software from source code. So all software is written in source code, I would imagine, unless you're writing in machine code, in which case you're a robot. Building it, compiling it, linking it, making some kind of binary that can be executed by a machine. Or maybe it's you're programming in JavaScript or something. You're still building the dependencies. You're still building you're still doing the Webpack stuff to kind of package a single JavaScript binary. So every piece of software in 2020 is built in some way. Verifying it, so running all the tests, running all the checks, from static code analysis, linting, to unit tests, integration tests, and essentially doing this in an automated way, constantly, and operating on top of your source code repository. The idea is that through continuous integration, you're making sure that your trunk, your main branch, your master branch, is always in a shippable state, because you know that you have actually built the last iteration, and you can't let kind of failed builds in before it's actually passing. One more thing, it needs to work on every machine. It can't work on just developers' machine, because developers really like, I mean, if you're like me, you'll usually just poke around something and say, yeah, this works on my machine, but then you're trying somewhere else and it's not working.
Fine.
Yeah, so CI is basically building, verifying on every machine. The way it does do that is basically run it in isolation. You specified what kind of machines we run on, so we really try to specify it very finely to like run it on very clean machines, so fresh installations. We use virtualization technologies, but we'll get into that a bit later. CD is not what we used to listen to before Spotify and Napster. It means continuous delivery or deployment. What I mean by that is delivering that built software, tested software, to stakeholders, to users, to whoever is relevant for that piece of software. It's not usually, and it's not always end users, but it sometimes is, and sometimes it goes to testers. It sometimes goes to your product manager. It sometimes goes to another team. Doesn't really matter. it goes to somewhere, it is delivered. And it's delivered in an automated, reproducible way. Taking this one step further is the deployment, which is another meaning of the CD abbreviation, which is actually the technical term of deploying this software to a staging environment, production environment, to an app store, if it's like an iOS or Android application, or to a test flight, something like that. So the way I understand it, the way I like to reason about this is CD by default means delivery, and deployment is part of that delivery. It's a more kind of subset of the term. Okay. That's what it is. It also automating everything and getting everything ready to be deployed automatically is great for one more reason, because like reacting to things that happen in your world, whether you like it or not, sometimes events out of your control will happen. And like last week, if you're an Mac OS developer, you probably need to support an extra architecture, which is completely different from what it was before. From like Macs 2 weeks ago, we're only running on Intel-based architecture, and now they're actually running on ARM, Apple-owned designed ARM chips, the M1 that they released. And that basically means that there is a whole new set of hardware to test on. And by having everything automated through CI/CD, you basically just kind of add these scripts, add these environments, and you reuse everything that you've had so far, as opposed to like redoing this manual testing process, the manual packaging and building process yourself. So you're way faster to act on any changes. And also sometimes mistakes happen, even with a lot of tests, even with a lot of care and attention. Sometimes you ship broken software. CI/CD usually lets you kind of go back from that, or recover from that, roll back a little bit faster, or a little bit easier. I'll talk about that a bit later as well. But yeah, so you can react better. So yeah, that's kind of the what, why, and who for. So the first part. Now let's look at the more technical part of the presentation, how CI and CD actually works. So pretty much every CI/CD system out there, and this doesn't really only cover CircleCI, covers these steps. So some kind of event happens in your source code repository. I'm intentionally calling it VCS because it doesn't need to be Git. It doesn't need to be GitHub. It can be Subversion for all it matters, or Mercurial. But some kind of event happens, commit, pull request, a merge, that triggers some kind of, like webhook, or tells your CI/CD system, hey, this has happened. There is new code. You should probably do something about it. Then that CI/CD system figures out what it should do about it, which is called a workflow, triggers that workflow, and that's essentially just a script that runs, or a set of scripts that run outside of obviously your computer, outside of your team's computer, but like in a central kind of build environment. This workflow consists of several, or it consists of one or several jobs, which are then run, and that's like orchestrated however you wish to orchestrate it. So you can do it like one after the other. For example, if you need to build first, then run unit tests, then run integration tests, then do the kind of production build, then deploy, or in parallel. For example, if you have your build done for a web application and you want to run functional tests across a set of 12 browser OS combinations to make sure that everything looks okay. You can actually run these in parallel because it doesn't really need to run one after the other. Then when all these jobs are run, the workflow is finished. The build status is either green or red. Before that, as we all know, with the Schrodinger's cat principle, the build is both green and red while it's still running. Yeah, then we go to 1 and repeat the whole process again and again and again until the software is shipped. And then we still repeat that process again until they stop paying us, essentially. Green is good. If a build is green, that's good because it means that all the tests have passed, all the compilation has passed, everything has been deployed successfully, delivered successfully. So green check mark is usually what you are looking for, which means that a red one is not something you want. But that's not exactly the case, because even a failed build, a red build, is good for something, because it's a signal. A failed build is a signal of your CI/CD working and doing stuff in the background while you're looking at GIFs of red pandas. Basically, both green and red signals are good because they tell us, yes, this is the state of my build. Now I know what the next steps are. If it's red, I'll go add more code. If it's red, I'll go fix that same code. If it's green, I'll go add more code. And that's basically why you shouldn't be really afraid of breaking the build, just like afraid of breaking it in production. Because if it's a PR, it's not going to get merged if it's broken on CI, right? So you're good with that. Now let's look at a demo. I'm going to do 2 demos today. First, I'm going to be setting up a project that I have on GitHub with CircleCI to show you how this kind of works. And then we're going to go through that configuration and talk about it some more. So I have this project. Yeah. It doesn't have any CircleCI integration. It's just a Node.js application. I can actually show you what it does. It just shows a GIF. Let me quickly show it to you. It's a very, very simple Node application. Heroku app. So I've deployed it on Heroku. Needs to wake up. Anyway, it has some source code. It's built in TypeScript, so it's actually compiled down to JavaScript. It has a single test, which responds to test root path and 404, and that's basically what it shows. So very, very advanced technology, but only good for showing this build. Okay. In CircleCI, you usually have a dashboard. Mine is mostly red because, as I said, I'm fairly new to this and I'm mostly just kicking the tires and trying to break things with various integrations. But today we'll be looking at setting up a new project, which is my Norfolk's developers demo node, the same repository. Clicking set project. Actually, this might be better if better visible, right? Doing that basically will generate some config for Node. It's detected it's a Node project, and clicking add config will it'll essentially create a new branch and create with this CircleCI config file. Let's see this working. Now that this project is kind of linked to CircleCI, we've told CircleCI, hey, look at this repository. We've also kind of told it what to look for and what to do when changes are made. It's kicked off the first build, which has a bunch of steps, and it passed both of my tests, and it's installed my packages. It's done everything. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. We've seen the config.yml. This is all stored in source control. So that's a single script which lets CI/CD tool automate everything that you want the build to really do. So what this means is that you can reproduce it like infinite times, basically, because it's whenever we're looking at this, we're running a new kind of environment, new Docker, creating a new Docker container from this image and running the same set of scripts that are encoded in our Git history. So it's all kind of 100% reproducible. It's transparent because everyone in your team is able to go into the repo and see what you've done. And I'll show you some cool stuff later on, how you can actually see like some cool repos on GitHub that use CircleCI or like any CI tools. So CircleCI.config YAML is a CircleCI specific thing, but many CI tools will have similar way of configuring things. It's transparent and it's rollable back, however the right term for this is. So yeah, I can go to a previous commit and deploy that, run that. It's going to go back to the same state as it was in that part of history. So that's great. The only thing I'm less sure about is YAML, because I'm not personally a big fan of YAML, but that seems to be the trend of all the DevOps tools. It's all YAML all the way down. So yeah, what we're looking at with this YAML file is essentially a codified pipeline. Pipeline is obviously what we define. It's basically a set of workflows, jobs, and commands that are executed in their own execution environments. Workflows are basically from a trigger that's like a commit or a pull request or a tag or whatever coming from your source control system to some kind of output that kind of finishes after all the jobs in that workflow are completed. So I'll show it to you later on a real example in a bit bigger project that's going to be hopefully a bit easier to reason about. And jobs are essentially codified environments. So Docker container containing Docker image containing, let's say, node installation, Python installation, AWS command line tools, whatever, and a set of commands. These can be usually just the bash commands, but you can obviously install anything and run any script on it. So commands can really be like, you can tell it to run Python, you can tell it to run Kotlin script. I've seen Android developers run Kotlin script and they really enjoy that. So that's a pipeline. So you could also say that this is all a series of tubes. You have to be of a certain age to understand this meme. Someone once said this about the internet, trying to explain it to young people. Yeah, but pipelines kind of are a series of tubes. So now let's look at some pipelines that aren't as trivial as this one. So I'll show it to you on the project that I kind of built this off. I have it on a repo, but I forgot to open no, it's Norfolk developers. I forgot to this one. Yeah, sample integrations node. Same project, but a bit more advanced config. As you can see, I have just a single workflow. So every single time, just this workflow is going to trigger, which then defines a bunch of jobs. There were a couple of questions. Can Circle introduce red panda GIFs on the right-hand side of the build steps? Great feature. I don't know who to talk to about this, but I agree. I will ask.
Kev actually also brought up a good point as to why YAML is used over JSON potentially, and it's the ability to add comments, which is pretty handy for CI and CD, which you don't get in many other config formats. So yes, but bloody good point. Cheers, Kev.
Today I learned, yeah, definitely. Comments are definitely good. Do we get CircleCI
commenting out the broken build steps I wrote before?
Exactly. Do we get CircleCI for free? There is a free tier and there is a free open source tier as well. So so you can basically just get started and poke around and see if it works for you. Like I'm on a free tier. All the demos that I'm doing are always on a free tier. I've never had to even go into the company one to upgrade it, and I've basically been running crazy builds. So yeah, workflows are defined through a series of jobs. So we give one a name and tell it which jobs it has. So first job is node/test. This comes through an orb. I'll cover orbs a bit later, but essentially they're a way to share common snippets of configuration between projects. We're also filtering this job, basically telling it that it should only run this on tags that have a version regex on. So I'll show you why a bit later, because I wanted to do some kind of fancy production deploying after I've tagged a build, basically to go to a different Heroku build. And then we're following up with Heroku deploy via Git. Again, Heroku, this comes through from an orb, again, configuration. We're giving it a name, so because we have two of these, so we have to give each job its own name, and then you can specify a bunch of environment variables. Okay, 2,500 credits, right? I think that's right. Yes, that's the free tier. There might be more for open source projects. Does CI testing happen on a pull request code set before the pull request is approved, before the trunk is updated? Yes, it happens on a branch. So it will trigger pull request on each, it will trigger the CI/CD job on a branch, which will then hook into your version control software to tell you whether this branch is actually passing or not, and then you can merge it. Now I think actually the pull request is even before, and then after you merge it, it will run again on the trunk or main branch or wherever you're triggers the defined branch by workflow. Oh, you mean from this particular configuration?
Yeah, the last question. It triggers the branch which is defined in the workflow. That is something which is, there is a pull request, and then it goes automatically what defined it in workflow or not.
Sorry, can you repeat that? So if it's a pull request, it triggers
the pull request, but
yeah.
If there is a workflow, it works through the workflow.
Yeah, it always goes through a workflow. If you had a workflow that didn't have this kind of configured, if you have it omitted in a workflow, then it wouldn't run, obviously.
Exactly.
Yeah. But you need to, obviously, by default, it runs everything. So you need to actually omit manually if you want to have clever filtering.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
People doesn't know that, and they talk, yeah, why is my pull request not running, not triggered?
Yeah. So where I was, we can actually talk about specific a bit later. I've actually played around this quite a lot to kind of get it to do what I wanted to do with filtering. Anyway, yeah. So this tells it, the required tells it basically that this job will only run after this previous job has the node test job has run, and only when the branch is main. So that's my trunk or master branch. And then we have two more jobs, which is an approval type, which is a funky way of telling CircleCI to kind of stop and wait until a human goes in and clicks OK or says no, which is basically if you have manual QA or something like that, you can actually program this as well. But this will only trigger on tags which are v something, so my semvert tags, and it will also ignore all my branches. So it will only trigger on tags. So you can combine these things. So that's my production deploy. So if my branch is main, I've merged everything. If I've tagged it as release, then only then it will deploy my production environment to a different API environment. And I'll show it to you in CircleCI now. Sample integration node. So as you can see, like I've got branches for various things. So this is a main branch, which ran build, test, deploy, and this is a tag, which is actually done. Oh, sorry. This is the one that I need to show. Yeah, so this was actually running node test, hold for prod, and deploy production app. So yeah, that's some cool stuff you can do. And obviously I could do like run a bunch of different tests. I could run browser tests. I could run integration tests through this. And this would obviously look a lot different based on how this workflow is. And this is like a visual approximation of how this looks like. So run tests for everything but deployments on main, basically. Yeah, correct. Yeah, and obviously my example is super simple. It deploys to Heroku. I could do more advanced things, like you can create a Docker container, Docker image, and then deploy that to Docker, or deploy a Docker container to Heroku. Whatever you really want to do, you can script and as long as it comes from some kind of source control and it comes into, it produces some kind of software artifact, you can use CI/CD to automate it. Yeah, there is, I think that's kind of everything that I really wanted to demo now. I also wanted to mention the orbs, which I mentioned earlier are like CircleCI specific feature to kind of share code across projects, repositories, and basically they encapsulate configuration, jobs, steps. So let me show it to you on the CircleCI developer site, where you have this is the circleci.com/developer. You have like a repository of orbs. We've used the node one. It basically comes with a bunch of jobs like node test, deploy, npm install, matrix testing, that kind of stuff already written for you. And yeah, so you don't have to do it. And this comes from like for all the programming languages, for the most popular ones at least, to AWS configs. So if you have like Lambda, I think there is one for S3, there is one for Docker, there is one for Slack that automates like Slack messaging of build statuses. So if your build is red, you actually can send a Slack message to a particular user or channel, that kind of stuff. We usually do like a Hacktoberfesting for orbs, where people are encouraged to develop their own orbs and submit them, and then they get swag from us, basically. And yeah, all those orbs are open source, and you can just find them on GitHub. So these are orbs, because if we didn't have this, right, we'd have to like write this manually, like from these kind of commands, like bash manually to check out code and run package install node, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so that's orbs. We also have an insights tab, which I haven't shown you yet. Essentially an insights into your build history. This is quite new feature that we rolled out, and basically tells us how our workflows did, how much we spent per day, per build, how long it took us to recover, that kind of stuff. But the idea is that, yeah, you see some kind of trends that your team is kind of following on through history. I think it follows the last 90 days. And hopefully you can see bottlenecks. Like if you have integration tests that are usually bottlenecks, or if you have a particular step that's breaking usually or more often than others, you can actually say, okay, we're going to focus more on that piece of the build than on something else. We actually also started, well, we finished doing that. So we've kind of collated these DevOps trends, which is like a pretty cool report from 30 million deployments or 30 million jobs or builds run, some obscene number essentially. We've kind of gathered statistics from like pretty much everyone who uses CircleCI. There is another question. I like what I've seen of orbs. Can you run two orbs in parallel so they can work together, like an API orb and a node orb? Yes, absolutely, you can. With orbs, like for instance, I'm defining Heroku and node orb. You could actually, like if each orb specified its own job, for instance, we could actually run these two jobs in parallel. Or usually it's like one orb helps you out with testing, building, and then you pass that artifact that you built from the previous step into the next step. So it's taken over by the second orb, second job as input, and processes that and takes that? That's a really good question. Thank you. So yeah, so these DevOps trends, I encourage you to check it out. It's pretty cool. It's like a 30-page, thoroughly researched PDF, state of software, metrics. So I found really cool ideas of what's in there. So yeah, as a summary of everything that we talked about, your CI/CD pipeline is how you automate your software from source code to production. It should do the heavy lifting. It should definitely do the things that humans suck at. So repetitive, hard to long-running tasks that you just get bored with and fall asleep or mess it up. So really do things that computers are good at. It should be fast enough. So I'll tell you a story how once I was running a build that took the whole workday, so 8 hours. We didn't run that for long, suffice to say, but we had a build that ran for 8 hours, and more often than not, it would break because of some kind of flaky tests, and that really slows you down. Your CI/CD should really be fast enough to help your team moving fast and like really shipping fast, shipping quickly, shipping often, and not really hold you back. But it also shouldn't be too fast, right? Because too fast would mean that you're either not running enough tests, you're either not you're missing things, and you're not getting enough of a signal back to you to kind of get the value that the CI/CD system provides. That's why I like the ambulance analogy, right? Ambulance needs to go fast, but it also needs to strive to get the passenger in not a worse state to the destination than they kind of entered it. So yeah, it needs to be fast enough. According to the report that I showed, it's the sweet spot is about 5 to 10 minutes for most high-performing DevOps teams. So, but obviously depends on frameworks, depending on tools, depending on what you're actually working on. But that's kind of the average.
I was going to joke that one of my CI pipelines was taking 13 minutes, and I thought that was long at the start of this conversation. And then you started with an 8-hour one, and the average is 5 to 10 minutes. So I'm super happy right now.
Absolutely. Like there is also like cool things that you can do, like run a subset of all the tests for your normal kind of development lifecycle builds, and then run a longer build with more elaborate tests if you're kind of about to release, if you really want to push stuff to prod.
So
and ultimately,
we've got a question saying, what sort of time would you say was too long? 8 hours, I'm guessing.
8 hours is, yes, definitely too long. We basically killed a bunch of functional tests after that because they were not giving us the value for it. So, but there's probably less than 8 hours is also too long. But again, depends on the system, depends on what you're doing. If you're building software for like manned rocket flight, then probably I would say 8 hours is good. It's fast. So, but if you're making a website or a mobile app, then yeah, try to get it lower than that.
Apparently, the default timeout in for each step in CircleCI is 10 minutes, but you can override it. Apparently,
yeah.
That's what CircleCI says, 10 minutes for each step.
And that's for a step, right? That's not for
the
entire workflow for build. And ultimately, yeah, it should be boring. Your CI/CD pipeline, it's a set of infrastructure, it's pipeline, it's plumbing. it should be boring. You should be able to just read it and say, okay, it does that. I'm confident that I've not invented something ridiculous, and I can trust my YAML file that it does what it looks like it does. So yeah, that's kind of it. The last thing I want to say is where to go next. I've mentioned our developer portal. So CircleCI.com/developer. If you're developers, I mean, it is a developer tool, so pretty much everything is developer focused, but this is the extra developer focused part. You can explore sample configs, read about orbs, convenience image, all that stuff. If you have Jenkins, you can actually convert that as well. There is a sign up button, obviously. You can join the forum at discuss.circleci.com. Again, if you have questions, we have folks always there to kind of help out. Obviously, you can always reach out to me as well. If I don't have an answer, I can find it out for you, definitely. And we do publish some cool stuff over our blog. So like announcement of that report, for instance, that was published on the blog. But yeah, there's tons of content in there. Definitely recommend it. And it's not just like product announcement, it's like everything. But yeah, my favorite thing is if you're kind of trying to build your CI/CD pipeline, you just search for config.yaml on GitHub, and it's crazy. I want to show you. So this is basically, 500,000 code results. What I've done is essentially just do file name config.yaml and version 2.1, which is the latest version of our config. And you get a ton of projects in there. And there'll be advanced ones. You can also filter by language of the project, filter by stars, that kind of stuff. You can do all that stuff. So I've definitely learned a ton from just looking at popular open source projects and seeing what works really well. So yeah, with that, I will say this has been a practical introduction to CI/CD. My name is Zen Markin, and now I'll take any further questions. And if you want some CircleCI swag, please do email me at zan@circleci.com, and I'll make sure you get some. Can you recommend any references for CI use with embedded software? So embedded software as in sensors, IoT, that kind of stuff. I'm not a particularly proficient in that topic, but for instance, if you have like if you have tests and software needs to be deployed onto devices like that, we have launched a tool called Runner, which basically lets you kind of run builds on your whatever kind of machinery that you have, whether it's like an ARM machine or whatever. You can do that.
I'm glad you said that, because there's a alternative that does provide that as well. We were doing embedded software testing when I got that t-shirt.
How much should developers know about CI/CD, how to maintain or set up and maintain? Enough so that you're not hindered by it and you actually gain value from it. So that obviously depends on every single situation. So that's a very sneaky answer, but in reality, like, you don't need to learn. You don't need to know a lot. If you have a project that's already using it, then you basically can just kind of look at the configuration setup and look at the dashboard and trying to figure out it from there. If you're a maintainer, that's basically where I'd start. Obviously, every single CI/CD tool will be different. They will have different, slightly different features, slightly different nomenclature. So yeah, your mileage may vary. But yeah, I think that like learning how to set up something is always good. But yeah, most projects can be set up fairly easily with just a default kind of Python or like a Gradle, Maven build, that kind of stuff, or Java build. And how have native CI implementations like GitHub Actions, GitLab CI, BB pipe? I'm not sure, but BB Bitbucket pipelines affected Circle competition a good thing? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. But I do know that people have kept telling me that we are still the fastest one. So and they still opt for Circle if they can. So yeah.
I'll have you know, Bitbucket was up all day today, Zan. All day.
It's good.
Yeah. Marvelous. The surprise, I tell you.
Is there a tool
minimum requirements
that combines all the different platform configuration syntax into one unified language?
Hot damn. Would that be platform configuration syntax for like each of the like CircleCI, Bitbucket, etc., or is that what you're asking, Stuart? Ah, right. Okay. Is there one config to rule them all? I wouldn't have thought so.
Yeah, I don't think there is. I don't think there is.
The thing that jumps out to me is that GitHub's way of defining actions is remarkably unique compared with everybody else. And I imagine there are everything's fairly unique. It's quite difficult to make a generalized syntax across those.
Yeah, I would imagine that underlying implementations vary by a lot at how everything is set up. So
it could be space for a migration service, though. Offer your services for migrating from Bitbucket, GitLab, etc. to CircleCI, and the other way, of course.
Yeah. Good stuff. Any more questions over on YouTube?
That is a very good question. Any more questions from the YouTubes? Not so far. Just thanks for the tip in regards to config YAML, again from Kev. Thanks, Kev, for your tips as well.
Yeah.
I guess we will say adieu to the YouTube crowd and move into the private section of the Zoom call. Hang on. Any plans for a GitLab integration? Oh.
I don't know. If you email me, I can find out for you.
Email zan@circleci.com. Thanks, Kev. And just more thanks. Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Don't forget to subscribe so you get notifications in future. Join us on 2 weeks time, December the 1st, for the last of the year. But yeah, see you later, YouTube.
Yep.